everyone. So today we are going to talk about Ukrainian Scala community, how it was created, who were involved in the beginning, and how it changed over the years. I'm Roksolana. I work as big data developer at Captify. Also, I'm diversity inclusion ambassador there. I'm part of local Women Who Code community, and I've been part of Scala community, specifically Ukrainian community, for the last 5.5 years. Also, I often speak at various conferences and meetups. So why this topic is important for me? Because I'm Ukrainian. Currently, I'm in Kiev. And I've been part, as I mentioned, of the community for years. It was very important for my career and development. And since the full-scale war started in February, I was thinking how my involvement with various conferences and meetups could be helpful in kind of raising awareness about Ukraine, as well as technical community in Ukraine. And that's why I thought that actually talking more about Ukrainian Scala community could be very helpful because it definitely deserves a spotlight.
Hi all, my name is Maciej. I work for JetBrains in the Scala plugin team. I'm also experimenting with Scala on Android and writing applications like that. I also have a small YouTube channel where I publish videos about functional programming. I'm not from Ukraine, I come from Poland. For the first time I was in Ukraine some 10 years ago on a long backpacking trip to Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, and then south from there to the border with Romania. I came back in 2018 to Kiev, invited to speak at the Scala UA conference, and then again in 2019. And I was very impressed by the quality, by the organization, and a very warm welcome. So yeah, we would like to tell you something about the Scala community in Ukraine, about the main events, what are the companies that saw the potential of the language and its users. And well, we believe that the Scala community is not only made of frameworks and libraries and job offers and educational videos, but it's made of people. Our community is one of the main Scala features, and a part of that community is in Ukraine. By the way, I would like to take this moment to thank the ScalaCon organizers for agreeing with us and let us talk about this important topic here. So, the IT market in Ukraine resembles that of other Eastern and Central European countries. Many companies work as subcontractors for bigger Western companies. Universities like these two, that's Lviv Polytechnic on the left and the Taras Shevchenko University in Kiev on the right. So they teach courses or they include Scala in their programs at some level of teaching. They are usually a bit conservative in what they teach and how they teach it. For example, students might learn old Java versions and libraries just because the course was created years ago and never updated. So this is pretty usual for universities, but anyway, it was possible to include Scala in the courses. Overall, the quality of education is high, and software developers who graduate from Ukrainian universities or who took programming courses at them, they are skilled and ambitious. Here on the next slide, you can see logos of some companies that are active in Ukraine and were present, for example, at Scala UA conferences. Of course, they were there for their own reasons, to promote their brand and to find new employees, because the number of jobs is bigger than the numbers of developers as everywhere in the Scala world. But nevertheless, their presence meant support for the Scala community. So if you see it, guys, or if you are from one of the other companies that support Scala in Ukraine, but I didn't put your logo here, thank you.
Yeah, so the most people learn about Scala Ukrainian community from the meetups or Scala UA conference, as it was mentioned, because it's a pretty big event. But before we're going to talk about it, I'm just gonna give a bit of context of what's been happening in the recent years in Ukraine and how it actually influenced the development of community. So most people know that the full-scale war started on February this year, but actually before that there was a revolution called Euromaidan, which happened in the end of 2013 to 2014. So in the end of 2013, a lot of people were actually supporting kind of European course. They were supporting getting into European Union. And the first step was to get visa-free travel for Ukrainians. At that time, to travel to Europe, we had to apply for visas. And a lot of people were like supporting this course, although always like since the independence of Ukraine in 1991, there was always some kind of influence from Russia, either by kind of providing their own parties or politicians in the government and supporting them. And what basically happened in the end of 2013 is that the government suddenly decided to change the course and have closer ties with Russia instead of going closer with Europe. And that's what got people really frustrated. And a lot of people went to protests on the main square in Kiev, Independence Square, and it's called Maidan in Ukrainian. That's why the whole like revolution and protests were called Euromaidan. So the people went out basically just for the support of European course, and instead of having closer ties with Russia. And what happened is that protests got bigger and bigger. More people were coming out. Since in the beginning, it was mostly like students and younger generation, but there were more and more people later. And then eventually the government was thrown away, and the former president left the country, and we had like proper elections, and eventually we got this visa-free travel, and now, as you probably heard, Ukraine applied for the European Union. But also during this time, it was happening for quite some time, like a few months. There were tents on the square even until summer of 2014. So almost like more than half a year, there were tents on the square. Some people were actually like sleeping in sleeping bags and spending a lot of time there. And aside from the protests themselves, there were various events like concerts. For example, one of the famous Ukrainian bands called Okean Elzy had a concert on the main square, and actually 1 million people came for the concert. So not everyone were there for the protests only. And also at that time, people were trying to kind of share their knowledge around the topics that they were interested in. And actually the photo that you can see on the right is one of the tents where people interested in Scala were talking about Scala, sharing their knowledge. So it wasn't like a meetup, more like just informal discussions. But at that time, even like having on the background the protests and revolution, people were trying to kind of develop their technical expertise and share their knowledge, even in these conditions. And later, as I mentioned, when Ukrainians got this visa-free travel to Europe, a lot of people traveled to Europe for the conferences as well, to be speakers or attendees. And they kind of saw how it looked like, and it helped the community to develop, as well as people got the jobs in European companies, either working remotely from Ukraine or working right there in various countries.
Yeah. Later on in 2015, there was a Scala meetup in Lviv. You may know one of the speakers from that meetup, Dmitry Petrashko, who worked later in PFL, and you may know him for his work on the Dotty compiler. The meetup went well, and it gave these three lovely people here on the photos, Ruslan Shevchenko, Natalia Makowska, and Viktor Svistunov. It gave them an idea of an even bigger conference in Kiev. Roksolana, could you just move one slide backward. Yeah. So there's one photo here on the bottom left. That's Ruslan on the steps of the Independence Monument at Maidan, rehearsing for one of his talks at that tent during the Maidan. And when I talked to him and when I saw that photo, I thought to myself that, okay, like if I ever again complain about the conditions in which I perform or I make my presentations, then I will just shut up. Yeah. Okay. So back to the photos. Okay. Back to those three. In an interview with me, Natalie said that the whole thing started with Victor, Ruslan, and Natalie meeting in a cafe. Victor and Ruslan were very enthusiastic about Scala. They talked about it a lot. They wanted to organize a conference and came up with a lot of ideas, what talks should be there, who to invite, what are the new interesting frameworks and libraries, what they wanted to talk about. And then Natalie asked, okay, but you will have speakers, and what will they eat? And there was silence, like neither Ruslan nor Victor thought about it. So Natalie told me that this is how she got involved in organizing Scala UA conferences. Ruslan and Victor were mostly interested in the technical part, and she took care of the organizational part. The first conference was in Kiev in 2016. Yep. Natalie remembers the speakers were worried about the war in Donbass. The organizers wanted to make them feel welcome and cared for. So they managed to organize transport from the airport to the conference hall and also rooms for the speakers in the hotel in the same building as the conference hall. In later conferences in 2018 and 2019, there was also a trip around Kiev through historical places and also Maidan. Again, quoting Natalie, Scala UA conference was held once a year from 2016 to 2019. In 2020, it was held online due to COVID, and then it was suspended. The organizers tried to make one of the most comfortable and informative Scala-driven community conferences. The organizers relied on feedback from the participants and tried to bring the most effective ideas to the conference. That is why Martin Oderski was brought to the online Q&A session in 2019. Training webinars were also organized between conferences. In addition to video reports and talks, the conference channel featured interviews with speakers about current trends in the Scala world. There were panel discussions, lightning talks, and of course, after parties on Scala UA. Scala UA has brought together more than 15-20 speakers from 10 or 12 countries and more than 200 participants every year from over the globe.
So also there were Scala meetups. Most of them were in Kiev, and that's why Kiev Scala group was very active during the last couple of years. There were speakers mostly from Kiev, and sometimes there were speakers from different countries over kind of video call, even before the online events started to happen. So in terms of what's been happening during these years, is that the first event was in December 2017. There were only like 10 people on that meetup. It was organized by Evaldas, who moved to Ukraine some time ago, and he wanted to kind of meet more people in Scala community, and that's why he wanted to organize meetups. So on that event, even like the projector didn't work, and the speaker had to present from the laptop, but it didn't spoil the fun, and a lot of people were excited that there's going to be some kind of regular meetups in Scala community. And the next event happened in January, and that event was a bit bigger and it was more successful. There were around 30 people. And actually, that event was important because Evaldas met there Ruslan Shevchenko, who is one of the organizers of Scala UA. And till that moment, they started to organize events together. Ruslan knew community pretty well, so he could advise kind of people who would be able to speak at those events and share like the events between the larger community. So the regular meetups have been happening practically every month in different locations, depending like which companies were able to host the events. The last in-person event happened in October 2019. And after that, some people started to do online meetups in Kiev in different communities, but it was very popular in the beginning, 2020, but not everyone kind of enjoyed that. So the first online meetup happened only in June of 2020. It didn't get regular because at that time people were already kind of getting some kind of fatigue from online events and conferences, and not everyone wanted to speak also in online format. The idea of kind of online events didn't take off. So there was some kind of break between getting back to more regular events till summer 2021. So the restrictions around COVID were kind of lifted at that time, and that's why it was a bit easier to think of offline in-person events as before that. But still, a lot of people were kind of hesitant whether to come to some offices, or whether they need to wear masks for the events. So not many people came to those offline meetups. So again, it didn't come back to kind of regular pace. And then in February, the full scale war started, and after that, all the meetups stopped. And for now, like they haven't been happening. Also talking about how I got involved in the community. Actually, on the left is you can see the photo of the conference Scala.io in Lyon in 2019. It was actually the first conference where I was speaking after Scala UA in 2019. And on the right is kind of the conferences when they started to get back to in-person events in the end of 2021 and 2022. So I got involved with the community in December 2017. So I was one of those 10 attendees of the first meetup. At that time, I was only learning Scala for a couple of months along with my colleagues. So we were very excited that there's going to be some kind of regular events. At that time, I didn't know about any other events in Scala community, as I was just starting out. So I was really happy that there's going to be some kind of source of knowledge and people I could ask for help. So after that, I came to various meetups. Obviously, wasn't attending every month. I was kind of visiting when I was interested in some topics. So I saw very different events in terms of organization, like multiple speakers, workshops, or one speaker with shorter talks in various locations with kind of more people or less people, and kind of smaller events around that. And in March 2019, I became a speaker at Scala UA. It was my first experience speaking at the conference. And it was very exciting because I was really nervous about speaking at the event, and the whole preparation was really great for the first-time speakers specifically. Ruslan and others in the committee organized kind of rehearsals for the speakers in Kiev, and some speakers who were more experienced could also rehearse their talks just to hear feedback from other speakers and the organizers. And it was very valuable for people like me who were speaking for the first time. And I was really interested to hear feedback like on the slides and content and everything, and it was truly valuable. Also, as for a speaker, the whole experience of the conference was special in comparison to other conferences I've been to in Kiev. Most of the events that we had in those years were held in Ukrainian, so they were kind of local. Sometimes there were invited speakers from other countries, so the keynote could be like in English, or there could be a track in English, but most of the talks in Ukrainian. So there were mix-ups. There were like mixing up of the content. While in Scala UA, most of the talks were in English, with a couple of talks in Ukrainian, and it felt more like speaking at the conference somewhere outside of Ukraine because of that. And also, there were a lot of speakers from other countries, probably like the ratio of 50% to 50% of local speakers. So it was also kind of creating this experience of speaking somewhere abroad. So that's why the conference was special in that way. And also the whole organization of like tracks and activities for speakers, like speakers dinner and parties for all the attendees were really fun. And like the whole level of organization was great at the time. And after that, I became speaker at various conferences, not only in Kiev, in other countries as well. And I was speaking at the virtual Scala UA conference as well in March 2020. It was a very different experience. And at the time, it was probably one of the first online events in Ukraine, because they had to like change the whole format in a month or even less when the pandemic started. So it was a huge effort to kind of change the whole organization of the conference to the virtual format. And at that time, like not so many people actually did that. So they had to switch to use Zoom, and then there was the whole platform for after party, which totally gave different experience, but at the same time, it was great to kind of connect with the community and still be able to speak at the conference and meet people, even though kind of doing it from the comfort of our homes. And after that, I was actively speaking at various Scala conferences and meetups in different countries. And being part of the Ukrainian Scala community helped me to kind of meet other people from other countries as well, like thanks to Scala UA conference. And considering that Scala community is not that big, it's always nice to meet familiar faces at various events.
Yes. So since the pandemic, the community moved to the online spaces in 2020, and most activities have been happening in the chats and on the calls. There are no meetups or conferences now, but people still communicate every day about various events in the Scala community and about projects they work on. One recent initiative was about adding the Ukrainian version of the Scala documentation and creating a GitHub repository with references to various resources and projects of the community. You can access that using this QR code here. A lot of people contribute to various libraries. They create their own projects and gather to work on them. So like the open source is very used, very much worked on still. Also, there's a constant stream of messages from people trying to get some help in learning Scala or figuring out which libraries to use. Moving to something about future plans about Scala UA. Scala UA organizers do not plan to do conferences in the near future, and it's not something that's been in demand really in the recent months in Ukraine, of course, because of what's happening now. People follow their colleagues that speak at various conferences, now more than and do it more than deliver the talks themselves. In the future, there will definitely be some offline meetups, but no one has any real plans when exactly and how it's going to happen. Overall, the community is working on spreading awareness about themselves and about Ukraine fighting on the informational front. And that is something that is definitely going to continue for some time. Generally, organizing in these times is hard. Again, from Natalie, organizing a conference is a mission. You feel joy when you see so many passionate people in one place and you know you did that, but it's also very exhausting. In the end, I also wanted to say something about how we can help. And
also, I'm going to mention as well that
okay, let's do it that way.
It's okay. That recently the meetups restarted in Ukrainian community. Like there was a chat created for the whole Ukrainian community, not only Kiev one. And that's why people were able to kind of to have practically bigger pool of people to share their knowledge and to ask about it. So a lot of newbies have joined the chat, and they asked a lot about various tools and how to like enter the Scala community and how to begin learning Scala. And a lot of people just are talking about some new libraries coming up, about the conferences, about the talks that they saw. So it's quite active. And also the online meetups restarted for the whole Ukrainian community. There was one on 30th of September, so just a week ago. And probably for now they're going to be in online format, although people are talking about having some smaller offline events kind of in western part of Ukraine, where a lot of people are currently right now. And what is special about those events as well is that they are happening for the donations to the army. Like people watching the talks can donate and help the army, and that's the way a lot of technical conferences and meetups have been working in Ukraine recently.
Yeah. So yes, I also wanted to say something about how we can help. It all may feel a bit obvious and maybe even a bit cheesy, but I think that even obvious things need to be repeated sometimes. So first of all, you can donate to charities of your choice, be it to help the Ukrainian army or to help refugees. The sooner the war ends, the sooner the people come back home and start to live normal lives again, the sooner the community may start to rebuild itself. Second, look for new virtual events. Attend them, participate if you can. Maybe you will find something interesting, like a new project in which you would like to involve yourself. I would like to encourage you to do that, even if you don't, because, well, of course, for most of us, that's not an option to spend free time on open source projects or helping with meetups and conferences. But even if you don't, connect to people who do and say that you appreciate their work. As someone who worked, well, a bit in both open source and meetup organizations, I know that words of support are very motivational. They might actually make a difference and lead to new events and new ideas. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Fire in retro rock.
Roger, Matt. Ready to eject.